one day where one part where you swam with the turtles.
Yep.
And then another one was this. I'll never forget it. It was a snorkeling slash diving, yeah, mostly just snorkeling, and it was an area where the ocean met fresh water.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, so you had a lot of fish that were able to adapt, so they would go in between. But it was really neat because you could literally see where the two waters would come together.
That's cool.
And dude, the water was, it was cold, but it was like refreshing. And it was so clear. Dude, it like it energized you like no other.
Yeah.
I've never felt anything like it. And you could, you had your goggles and you could, it was, there were areas that were pretty deep, maybe like, not pretty deep, maybe like 8 feet at the most, but just some of the most beautiful fish and coral. And it was a hell of an experience. It really was.
That's awesome.
Swimming with the turtles wasn't too bad.
Yeah, we swam
That
with
was
sea turtles
decent.
there. It was badass, but it wasn't like Mexico where they're like, "Don't touch them, don't get close." Like we were right up on them. It was badass.
Did you jump on the back of one and take a ride?
I mean, you couldn't like ride on them, but like we were touching them. I was literally close enough to touch one, swimming with it for like 20 minutes. It was pretty badass.
Hmm.
Not gonna lie.
I got to do that in the Galapagos, but
That's rad.
the turtles were the ones that were coming around us were a little bit smaller. Only like maybe a 3 foot wingspan.
Yeah, we had some huge turtles, but I kept going out too deep, and I kept forgetting that my name was Hefe. And they'd be yelling
Oh,
Hefe,
I'm changing your
and I'd
name
just
right
be like
now.
looking all around. It's like, why are they yelling? My wife's like, you forget your name's Hefe down here. Oh, that's right. I do remember being absolutely exhausted at the end of the day because
Oh
we've,
yeah.
visited like the temples or whatever, the pyramids down there, the Mayan, and then from there we did uh, cave diving and took an ATV all back through the jungles and wooded area, and then
That's
from
always
there
fun.
it was the snorkeling and turtle. It was and zip lining. Dude, we
Hey,
did so much
five
shit in one
seconds,
day.
guys.
So much shit in one day. But it was definitely a cool experience I'll never forget. But dropping the bucket compared to all the different places you've been to lately, my goodness.
I mean, I've been lucky. I'm not gonna lie. It's been pretty cool.
Yeah, Greg, since the audience is now here, how many conferences do you think you're going to do this year?
I can count. I've done 15, and then I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 more for sure on the book. So I'll do 25 for sure. But I thought it was going to be less, but I'm leaving tomorrow morning to do a conference in Maine that I just found out I was doing 2 weeks ago. So it's totally possible I'll end up at like 27 or 28, but hopefully I can keep it lower. I did 32 last year, like 32 that I actually spoke at. So it could be a lot. I do
Wow.
want to be home sometimes with my family.
Yeah, I bet. I bet. Do the kids ever come with you?
No, they want to. I bring
Great
my I
laugh.
bring my wife, but not the kids.
Yeah.
Uh, we are planning though, like, but everybody's just now listening. We were talking before the show about some of the places I've been, and we love Bali so much. I'm gonna retire there. Like it's amazing. But we're gonna go back next summer. We're taking the kids and staying for like a month. So we'll take them on that trip. But the
Yeah.
other stuff, like my little girl's 10 now, and before, especially like when I was really going hard before COVID, she was too young to do a
Yeah. To
10-hour flight
appreciate
to
it.
Europe and then to
Yeah.
appreciate it. It's like she's always been like, yeah, I want to go to Paris, but she's not going to remember that. So I feel like she's
No.
old enough now that
Yeah.
I think it would be worth taking the kids.
For sure.
At
Yeah.
least
She'll
part of
remember
it.
it now.
Yeah.
Man, with the prices you were telling us that you were seeing in Bali, why don't you just retire now?
That's oh my
I could,
goodness,
like, I
that's
literally,
insane.
I could retire now. We talked to a couple that had retired to that small island I was telling you about, and all in for, and they have a ridiculously dope condo with like its own pool. They have a maid that comes in and cleans it, but they live there. Like, it's not like a temporary hotel, and a tennis court, and it's like super awesome, super fast Wi-Fi. So between that and all food and entertainment, they spend about $12.50 a month US.
Hmm.
So like, and
Need to
that's the
check it
life,
out.
man. I could retire now, but like, I don't want to make my kids have to go be over there for schools and whatnot. And I like my job, so I don't want to retire
Hmm.
yet. But that's probably where I'm going to
I'm
end
with
up
you.
for sure.
Hmm.
Yeah, I just googled a complete guide to moving and living in Bali.
I
Gotta
can't wait to
check
get
it
Now,
out.
who's the SEO that wrote that?
right.
Is that, and I take it that's, that's what you speak on at each conference is around SEO. You said earlier
Yeah,
it's not, they're not all automotive related. You got a
yeah.
couple
So
different.
somebody actually did. There's a lot of different digital marketing conferences out there, and when I'm going to those, I'm there to educate other people that do SEO about how to do SEO. So there's a
Mhm.
company called Conductor that did a study in 2019. They looked at every digital marketing conference that had more than like 250 attendees in 2019 all over the globe, and like created this whole database of who was speaking at what event and whatnot. And apparently in 2019, by more than an order of magnitude, I was the most in-demand speaker at digital marketing conferences across the planet.
Very awesome.
Yeah, I don't know what that says, but yeah, like
That means too many people like SEO.
yeah, I mean it's a big deal. Like, I do this conference, like I'm going in 3 or 4 weeks to the UK to do a conference called Brighton SEO that I've been doing twice a year. They do it every April and every September, and I've been doing it for 10 years, twice a year. And it's got 6,000 people. Like in April, it was a little bit over 6,000 people at this event. So there's a
Wow.
lot of really big conferences out there. And I mean, you guys have seen me speak. People like my style,
Hmm.
and in digital marketing conferences, there's not quite as much flair as there is in the automotive world. So I really stand out with, the tattoos and the vest and the bow tie and the crazy slides and stuff. So I'm lucky that a lot of conferences like that. And I'm kind of a pretty well known entity in the SEO world. So conferences know if I'm there, people want to come see me, and it's worth it for
Hmm.
them to fly me over and be there to sell more tickets. So, hey, man, I'll take it as long as they keep doing it. I'll keep taking these awesome free trips all over the world.
I don't blame you.
So, Greg, is it the same message in the United States versus outside that you're spreading?
At a basic level, yes, but it kind of is a little bit watered down outside of the US, I guess I would say.
Hmm.
uh the rest of the world is a bit behind the US in like skill level and knowledge capital when it comes to digital marketing in general, SEO, PPC, things that we've been doing in the States for years are just now kind of trickling down. And a lot of times Google will roll out an update in the US first and then roll it
Hmm.
out outside of the US a month or two later or 6 months later. And they've gotten better the last few years about doing stuff kind of worldwide all at once. But definitely at a lot of these conferences, I'm talking about stuff that is a little bit more basic level than what I talk about in the States. But automotive kind of works the same way. There's a lot of stuff right now talking about the big buzz right now at all the automotive conferences is getting an awesome CDP set up. Okay, that's been going on outside of automotive for 15 years. So, when I talk at automotive conferences, I'm usually at a little bit more basic level because most dealership employees that are going to these conferences don't really understand all the intricacies of SEO. Where when I'm at an SEO conference, I'm teaching other SEOs how this works. So I don't have to cover the really basic stuff. I can dig into the more advanced things that work a little bit more effectively.
Hmm. Why are we so much in advance of other areas or other countries? Something like SEO, you'd think that other countries wouldn't lack. It's not like.
I mean, it's not that other people lack the knowledge. It's not as prevalent. There's not as many. The demand's not there. The
Okay.
general public in the U.S. is more technically savvy when it comes to digital marketing, and they understand all of the intricate bits and all the things you need to do, where outside the US a lot of people are just like, hey, I need to show up when people search for me, and they don't
Mhm.
understand you got to do SEO, you got to do these things, this stuff on your website matters, this stuff off your website matters. And like I said, for a long time, like 10 years ago, 8 years ago, when I was speaking at a lot of these international conferences, I would literally say, use the current state of SEO and digital marketing in the US as your guide for what to do in the future, because there are a lot of updates that were major updates that Google rolled out in the US and Canada first before they rolled it out everywhere else. So there was one time specifically where I was in the UK and Google had rolled out a really major local SEO update. And this was like 2014, I think. And they rolled
Mhm.
out this SEO update in December, but it wasn't being rolled out to the rest of the world until like June or July. So I'm at this conference in April saying, here's what we figured out has changed from this update, because we've had 3 months to do research and tweak things. So when this comes to you, you're not going to have to spend that time. You're already going to know. In fact, you can already start doing these things now. So when the update rolls out, then you get the benefit of, okay, cool. Here, this is what's
Mhm.
going to work for me. But it's more like, I mean, it's even like prices are different. Like, people outside of the US are shocked at how much companies will spend on SEO and PPC in the US. I think it's just there's so much more competition here,
Mhm.
and it's, you know, capitalistic society, whatnot. I think
Mhm.
there's just been more of a driving need to get really good at this stuff compared to other countries. Like I've got some of my good friends from the UK that are speakers at events all in the UK and Europe. We're at this conference in Seattle this week. And I was talking to one of them and I was like, do you really understand how big the UK is compared to the US? And they were like, no. And I was like, you can literally fit the entire UK inside of Texas, and it's only like
Yeah.
half the size of Texas. Like, it blows people away when I'm over either in the UK or Europe, and I'm like, I live in Texas. I can leave my house, drive 80 miles an hour, and go west, and it takes me like 10 or 11 hours just to get out of Texas. And that like blows their mind, because you can drive across the whole country in 2 hours in most places.
Yeah.
So I think just there's so much competition here. It's just driven people to really excel and learn this stuff, where if there's not as much competition in your smaller town in the
Vermont.
Netherlands, it's not as important. I mean, same thing here.
Mhm.
And we're talking, on the on an automotive podcast slash webinar thing right now. The dealerships in, like, I use Ford as an example because I live in Dallas. It's the densest Ford market in the country. There's 20 Ford stores all within about a 20-minute drive of each other in Dallas. A Ford dealer in Dallas needs to be much more aggressive with SEO than a Ford dealer in Wyoming or Idaho that doesn't have another competing Ford dealer for 100 miles in any
Mhm.
direction. So those guys don't have to worry about SEO as much as the Ford dealer in Dallas, where you can drive 10 minutes in any direction and hit 5 other stores. So it's
Yeah.
that kind of a thing. Outside of the US, you may just not have as much competition, so you're not worried about it. Or maybe there wasn't as much and now there's more competition, or user behavior has shifted and people are searching for you differently after COVID. So now it's more important, and that's why SEO is really kind of, it's always been around, but they're getting that more advanced level that we are here in the States.
Well,
Makes
and never
sense.
here, we've got the competition, like you're saying there in Texas, the competition of other dealerships, but we also have the competition of all the third-party sites,
Oh yeah.
competition of your different, magazine style sites. What's some of the ones? Road and Track, um,
Car and Driver, all that stuff.
Car
Yeah.
and Drive. Exactly. Do in other countries, do they have that that level of competition as well?
Yeah, there's still that kind of ecosystem, but it's just not as extreme. Again, it's just like
Okay.
the US is so big and so competitive. It's just a different landscape. You just have to work
Yeah.
harder.
Yeah.
Things that over here we would do for clients maybe might move the needle a little bit, might make a little bit of a result, might not. I could do the same thing for somebody in like London, and it's
And it's
overnight
huge.
50% increase in their traffic because nobody else is doing those things.
Yeah.
A lot of the stuff that, I think I said this at Digital Dealer this spring, a lot of the things that I'm talking about still make a really big difference for car dealers. But we've got a lot of attorney clients too, and attorneys are really aggressive when it comes to SEO strategies. And things that would make a really big difference for car dealers don't matter at all for attorneys because all the attorneys are doing it.
Mhm.
And, I've been talking at every automotive conference there is for more than 10 years. And one of the things, like, I'm starting to work on my presentation for Digital Dealer this fall. And one of the things that I'm saying that I also said this spring was 80% of what I'm going to talk about is the same stuff I've been saying for 10 years. It's not that it's changed. It's not that it's hard. It's that most dealerships don't have anyone in place in-house to do these things. So they rely on vendors. But the vendor system in automotive is so broken and so many vendors are horrible and dealers don't understand enough about SEO. So they just tick the box of like, hey, I'm doing it, but they don't get what
Yeah.
they're buying. And they don't get that it's not successful. That's why I can keep coming back every year. It's job security, man. I can keep telling everybody,
Well,
here's why you guys aren't showing up because you're doing all these things wrong or your vendor's doing all these things wrong. And here's how to do them the right way. But most people don't
Well,
put in the effort to do it the right way.
yeah. And that's just not SEO in the automotive industry, of course. I mean, what dealer refresh turns, what we turned 17,
18.
Get out, man.
18? I know. And, but it's still a lot of the same conversations.
Well,
You
Yeah.
know,
it's simple. I mean, have you seen the front of a dealership? They all have a revolving door spinning.
Yep.
I mean, it's unfortunate, but that's.
Well, I was speaking at an event last week where it was all of the Toyota dealers in Northern California. And they put on like a one-day event, kind of a Toyota Learning Lab thing. And they flew me and Brian Pash and David Kane in to talk to these dealers. And so that morning I'm sitting there at breakfast eating with one of these dealers. And he's like, oh, yeah, you're the guy that's coming in to talk about SEO. And I said, yeah. And he goes, well, I'm interested to hear it, but we don't really need SEO at our dealership. And I was like, really? Why do you say that? Because honestly, every dealer needs SEO. Whether they're going to do it or not's another question, but everybody needs it and everybody would benefit from it. And he says, oh, well, we've still got that inventory shortage and basically any new car we get's already sold. So why do we need to do any marketing? And I said, bro, you sell used cars? And he was like, yeah.
You got service?
You sell service? He was like, yeah. You sell parts? Yeah. You want to maybe surface some potential inventory that you could buy from ex customers or even non-customers to get more used cars to sell? And he's like, okay, yeah, I get your point. Maybe we should look at this, But that's a lot of dealers don't think about that. A lot of dealers are only concentrating on, they're like, I don't need SEO because when I search Greg Gifford Toyota, I rank number one. Well, of course, you're searching the name of the dealership, you're going to rank number one. And a lot of dealers are like, I rank for all of these extreme bottom of the funnel terms, but they don't think about the fact that people don't just decide to buy a car and get on Google and buy from the first dealership that they see, or they don't decide they're going to buy a car and just buy from the first dealership that they drive by. There's a lot of research that goes into that, and you've got to have that early and upper funnel content to capture those potential customers. And dealers just aren't thinking about that. The inventory shortage and chip shortage played in a lot of dealerships' favor because they made money hand over fist and it was super easy to sell a car. The problem is a lot of salespeople have forgotten how to sell, and a lot of dealerships have forgotten how to run a sales floor, and they
Or how to market.
Yeah, or how to do marketing. And then, we had the recession, which may or may not actually be a full recession now. Who knows? Because there's all kinds of different stuff. But at the beginning of the year, so many dealerships across the country were like, oh my God, recession, let's drop all of our marketing. And that's the worst time to drop marketing because you have to fight even harder to get customers if they're not spending money as easily. So why would you stop marketing? It's really counterintuitive and doesn't make a lot of
Yep.
sense.
Yep. Yep. Well, dealerships, especially with the marketing, that they, as it relates to sales, it's a 30-day window.
Yeah.
No matter what it is, 30-day window. And SEO is not a 30-day window marketing. It's long term.
Well, and the other funny thing is, because I speak at so many conferences and I do a ton of 20 groups, I talk to lots of dealers, and I have for years. And something that hasn't changed is I keep running into dealers, and you'll just ask them about their marketing mix. What are they doing? Oh yeah, we're spending, 15, 20 grand on Auto Trader and Cars.com. We're spending 40 grand a month on PPC and Facebook ads. And then you're like, hey, what are you spending on SEO? Oh yeah, we're paying this guy like $500 a month, or we're getting the cheapest package from Dealer.com for $1,000 a month. And it's like, why are you doing that? SEO is your most important marketing channel. You're going to get more leads from SEO than every other thing put together. And they're like, oh man, it's too expensive to spend more than that. And I'm like, bro, you're spending 15 grand on Auto Trader that can't even prove that's selling you a car. Yet you won't spend money on SEO that definitely proves that it's worthwhile. Like, I don't get it.
Well, like you said, job security.
Yeah, right.
I've been kind of in and out. My wife and I have been in and out of the car buying market for a better part of a year now. Like, been wanting
Alex,
to do something.
you're in that every year.
I know, but in the last 3 years, it's been I just can't bring myself to pay over MSRP, or even paying MSRP is difficult. So there's that mental roadblock for me that's held me back. Also, I don't need to do it, but we go out and we're constantly looking at stuff and not going into dealerships and wasting anyone's time, but looking online. And you do a lot of car shopping as a civilian, as a consumer, which dealers aren't. It's easy to forget how hard it is to try and figure out what a dealer has in stock. And once you get really good at recognizing features and things inside of photos, because that's your only way to figure these things out, it's then how do you find the dealer that actually has it?
Yep.
And like all these places, Auto Trader, Cars, Car Gurus, everywhere is I would say the third parties are probably a little better than the dealership websites themselves at showing these things off and categorizing them and making them a little easier to find. The website companies are horrendous.
They're awful. And it's also crazy in automotive how you have all of these website vendors that have created their own platforms. Like Dealer Inspire at least was smart and said, why do we need to go reinvent the wheel? Let's just create some plugins that will feed inventory into WordPress. And we don't have to have this massive dev team creating a CMS for our website. That was smart. But even still, you've got these just crazy, weird website platforms that don't work. Dealer.com hasn't updated its code in 10 years. And dealers are still on it. It's not a responsive website platform. And after the update that Google rolled out last summer, you get penalized for not having a responsive website. So if you're on Dealer.com sites, you automatically don't show up as well in Google as you could, regardless of who's doing your SEO. Yet Dealer.com still doesn't do anything to update that code base. Another big problem with them, you can't put alt text on your images, which A, is important for optimization, but B, ADA compliance laws said that any embedded images on a website have to have alt text because anyone with a visual impairment is going to use a browser that's a screen reader, and that browser can't read the images, but it'll read the alt text on images. So if you don't have alt text, you can be sued by a blind person for not having a usable website. And that's happened for hundreds of car dealerships already. Yet Dealer.com still won't update their platform and let you put alt text on the images. Like, some of this stuff is just so ridiculously boneheaded. I'm not sitting here trying to bash on Dealer.com, but I just don't get how people in automotive are so we sell cars and we know exactly everything about it, but they don't take that step back and go, what's it like for our customers?
It's impossible, Greg. I grew up in a dealership. The day my eyes were opened was the day I had to take my car in for service as a civilian. So I was 30, 32, 30, whenever I moved up here to Vermont. So 30 years and 40 cars. I don't know how many cars I had at that point. Like I had never, ever scheduled an appointment. I had never, ever like truly bought a car, negotiated one. Really didn't have to do research. It was more like I'm walking past something. That looks cool. Okay. Hey, John, used car manager. What's, I know I just bought that car 2 months ago, but man, can we get rid of it or whatever?
Yeah.
And, I like that one better. And we'd figure out a way to make it work. But the day I had to walk into service and got to see what my dealership operational brain and how it was wired to make the lives easier of the dealership employees and to try and push the customers into our process, which is all I ever thought about, and how to get our employees to actually go along with the process, because that was a challenge in itself. That was all I ever thought about. It was never, what would make this easier for a customer? I'd never been one. I couldn't think that way. And now, as a customer, I'm just seeing all these things that I used to be I was just so guilty of doing wrong. The customer experience is not the first thing that many dealers think about.
No, for sure.
Yeah. Speaking of that, there's a nice comment here from Ryan, and I just want to comment on this first as you all read it, if you can. He's asking about like GM pushing EV content, EV inventory, and wanting to put all dealers on the same website platform and make them all look identical, and so forth and so on. How that'll impact SEO, and I would say, Ryan, going back to my consumer experience, GM's going to make more Ford customers. So.
Oh yeah. And it's stupid. They're doing the same thing that Toyota, like one of the big things I talked to this Toyota dealers about last week is Toyota's pushing SmartPath so hard. And you have these massive, covers the entire screen pop-up about SmartPath on the homepage of a website. And I'm like, everybody in the room, what do you do when you go to a website and immediately a pop-up appears and covers everything on that website? You close it without reading it.
Get the hell out of it. Yeah.
So why are you doing that on your own site? And then the other thing that Toyota is suggesting is that everybody replaces the inventory links on their website with links to their SmartPath inventory, which is on a different subdomain, like Ryan was talking about with EVs being on a subdomain. And the thing that you have to remember about SEO, at the most basic level, Google is only a pattern detection program. That's all it is. It goes out and it detects and classifies patterns. So now Google has this established pattern for what a usable, good website is. And for car dealers, it knows there are certain things you need to have, one of those being inventory on your website. If your inventory is on a separate subdomain, you are now a car dealership saying, here's my website, I'm a car dealership, but I don't have any cars for sale. You're not going to show up in Google. And it's the dumbest thing ever. And nobody at any of these OEMs is thinking about the digital marketing implications of these moves that they're making. And I wish I had like a tinfoil hat. I put on the tinfoil hat. Like obviously all the OEMs are trying to split EVs off separately so they can get rid of the dealership model and sell direct to the public. And dealers are freaking out about it. But you know what? It's a better experience. I just bought a Polestar. I never went into the dealership until I picked up the car. You don't have to go mess with all of the old school stuff that dealers are still trying to make happen. Now, does that mean every car purchase needs to be that way? No, but they have to think about these implications of let's put all these things on a different site or a different subdomain. Okay, what's that going to do for your SEO? And Ryan was right asking that question. It is horrible for SEO, but the OEMs aren't thinking this. And the SmartPath, there were a couple of SmartPath people in the room because they had some tier 1 and tier 2 people talking too, and the SmartPath people got mad because I'm sitting there going, don't do this. It's a really bad idea. And SmartPath was mad. And then Brian Pash was talking about when it comes to Google Ads, if you're a dealership and you're running Google Ads and your inventory only exists on the SmartPath subdomain, it's a huge black hole for tracking and attribution for your Google Ads because you can't track conversions because you're driving someone to a different domain that doesn't have events firing into Google Analytics for your dealership. So how are you supposed to track the effectiveness of your advertising? So there's a lot of things that the OEMs aren't thinking through, and the dealers don't know enough about this stuff to consider the
Call 'em out.
implications of all of these drastic changes that are happening over the last few years. And there's not anybody talking at conferences about it. That's why we're starting our own conference, because most of the conferences are not that beneficial for dealers.
Well, that's that. I was going to segue into that because earlier you're talking about how many conferences you speak at. So I guess your idea was let's just add one more to my list and start my own conference.
Well, we've been talking about it for a few years, and it basically came about because, again, I do have a lot of exposure outside of automotive, where most vendors in automotive aren't going to other conferences. They stay in the automotive bubble. And automotive has this really weird thing that just doesn't happen in other verticals, where almost every conference other than NADA or Digital Dealer, it's pay to play. If you want to speak, you got to pay money and buy a sponsorship to get a speaking slot. Where outside of automotive, the conferences are building the educational portion of the conference to help the attendees be better. And in automotive, David Kane actually does a pretty good job of being selective about what people are speaking at his event. But all these other ones, it's literally just the conferences exist to make the conference organizers money off of the vendors. And there's not really any vetting of the content that's going to be at these events, because it's just vendors that are paying a fee to get somebody on stage to talk about their product, to try to sell stuff. And nobody's there going, look, here's what you need to know so that you're going to be better at what you do. And, some of these conferences, you got to pay $25K just to speak. And then, also you're going to have the little vendor tables either around the edge of the room if it's a small conference, or you're going to have the whole expo hall. And the dealers have to do parkour to get away from these sales guys that are just so aggressive because they want to get leads. So we said, look, we're totally okay going and buying me a humongously expensive speaking slot. And I did someone's event in Austin earlier this year, not naming names, that I paid $25,000 to get a speaking slot. There were 12 people in the room.
Whoa.
But I still got business out of it. It's still worth me being there. But we start looking at these things and we're like, we could do this better. Why don't we do something that's focused on dealer education? So we're not going to have any vendors at this event. And we don't even mind if we lose a little bit of money putting this event on, because it's not about us making money. And it's not about we're doing this to get a bunch of leads because I'm speaking, but then everybody else works for other companies. So we invited all of the speakers. It's like the best of the best, top level expert automotive speakers. And they're all bringing really advanced strategies and tactics that they don't typically talk about at other events, because we're marketing this as this is really advanced help. We're keeping this to a small group. This isn't like unlimited tickets. We're doing it on a Monday so dealers can fly in on Sunday when the dealership's closed, and then it's over early enough on Monday they can fly home Monday night, only miss a day of work. Dallas is where it's happening, in North Dallas. So Southwest Airlines and American Airlines are both hubbed in Dallas, so you have a lot of flight options that are really cheap. The conference ticket's only $350. It's the first conference ever in automotive with an equal 50-50 split between men and women speakers. So there's just a whole lot of things that we're doing differently with this event, because it's time for a change. You shouldn't have to drink the Kool-Aid and listen to the conference organizer hype their own company in the intro, and then the after lunch intro, and then the happy hour parties and all that. Why can't we have an event where dealers leave and go, that was stinking awesome, that's going to help me be better at my job, instead of all these other ones where dealers are like, man, I went to 2 days of talks and I got maybe 2 or 3 tips that might help. Or when you have all the big name people all speaking at the same time, like me, Kevin Fry, Jennifer Briggs, and Sean Rains all speaking at the same time. So now a dealer has to choose between which of those speakers they want to go see. And it's probably the best speakers at the event, and they're all at the same time. So we're doing ours where it's a single track and you get to see everybody that speaks and you don't have to make a choice. Again, it's that exposure to events outside of automotive and seeing how most events are run, and they're just not run that way in automotive. So we wanted to make a change and make it better for the dealers.
Mm-hmm.
What would you say is let me take a step back. So you were talking about spending $25,000 to go to a conference or to speak at a conference. And then you got the booths in the middle of the eating area or whatever. And,
Yep.
and the salespeople are out there, and they're trying to get the dealers to sign up, and that's because, let's say you got a $500 a month product. In order to break even on that, you need to sell 4 dealerships, right?
Yeah, for sure.
On just the speaking part, not including the room and board and the plane ticket and
Oh yeah.
feeding your people and any uniforms and all that kind of stuff that you might have had to invest in. So let's say you got to do 5 deals at $500 a month in order to break even. So now your sales team has a quota, and of course it's more than that, and blah, 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 blah. And that's why these things happen. But getting back to the difference between automotive and non-automotive conferences that you've attended, they've been on a single track, you say.
Yeah,
So
not all of them, but like the one that I went to this week in Seattle, it's single track, and that's it. Like everybody's in the room, you watch every talk, and that's it. It's not this multi-track where you've got 5 or 10. Yeah, Bruce has a great point there that a lot of times there's more vendors at the event than there are dealers. But
definitely in the last 3 years.
There are conferences that do the multi-track thing, but when they do it smartly, where it's, one room is about SEO content, another room is about technical SEO issues, another room is about paid search. So if you're a paid search person, you can go sit in the one room and hear all those talks. Or if you're a local SEO person, you sit in the one room and hear all those talks. It's not like you're going to put 3 paid search speakers all at the same time in different rooms, and now you got to choose which one you want to go do. And, a lot of the conferences in automotive, it's like, maybe you want to see an SEO talk and a talk about hiring service techs and a talk about how to make your BDC better. But that conference scheduled all those people at the same time, and now you have to choose which one of those you're going to see. Or if you're there with a couple of other people from the dealership, you got to kind of divide and conquer. And you never know how great those talks are going to be. And sometimes, a lot of times, even though the conferences are all like, don't pitch at our event, it's just a thinly veiled sales pitch about that person's product. Or they're educating, but their education stuff is really directed towards making you try to submit a lead to talk to them about their product. And there's very few people that just get in there and go, hey, look, I would like the thing I said to the Toyota dealers last week. I was like, yeah, I'm hoping that somebody here is going to call me, but I'm not here spending money. I got invited to this, and Toyota footed the bill for bringing me out here because Toyota wants me to help you. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to help you. If you want to call me for more help later, hey, that's great. But if not, my entire presentation wasn't designed to get people to call me to buy SEO for me. My entire presentation was designed to educate the dealers to be better at SEO or know more, so they can hold the vendors that they're using accountable for what they're paying those vendors to do.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I was trying to get to a way to figure out why the automotive conferences are set up a little different. And it's got to be a profit reason.
Well, I mean, it's not necessarily that they're set up that differently, because a lot of the SEO conferences also have an expo area, where you can go see booths. I'm not saying that that's a bad thing. And conferences are expensive to put on. Don't get me wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I get that a lot of times you need to have vendors. And like, I was talking to Sean Raines about this because he and I are friends, and he's like, you're kind of crazy to not have vendors, because you just have a couple of vendors there. And even if you're not charging a lot, charge $2,000 for a vendor to have a table. You sell 10 of those, you got 20 grand. That covers the cost of your event. And then it doesn't matter how many tickets you sell. But we wanted to create something different on purpose. And if dealers want the experience of, I want to go hear some sessions and I want to go shop some vendors, there's other conferences that already offer that solution. That's not what we're trying to do. We don't want to compete with Digital Dealer or NADA or Brian Pasha's events or David Kane's events or Sean Bradley's events, or I was going to say Jim Ziegler, but he's not doing events anymore. But, we're not trying to compete with all those guys. We're trying to offer a different thing for the people that want advanced education, and that alone. But we're also crafting it differently. Like, why not have an equal split between men and women? There's plenty of smart women in automotive. It's dumb that it's so overly white male in the speaker lineup everywhere. It's dumb that you have these conferences that are like Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, which means you got to fly in on a Monday and fly home on a Friday. So you miss an entire week of work for a 3-day event. You have all of these vendors there to supposedly pay your bills. But a lot of these conferences have kind of, I think, gotten distracted by the dollar signs. And it's more about them making money off of the event than it is to provide a truly beneficial event to the dealers. So that's just, there's a whole lot of different things that we're trying to do differently with this so that, ideally this becomes something that we do a couple of times a year in different cities to make it easy for people to get a higher level of education than what they're going to get at other events at an affordable price. So it's not like you got to go to your boss and go, "Hey boss, I want to do this other event, but it's going to be another $1,500 for a ticket. And it's $1,000 plane ticket, and I'm going to be there for 4 days, so it's going to cost us another $1,000 for the hotel, and then another $500 for my food. So for me to go to this event, it's another $3 or $4 grand for the dealership." Like this event, literally one night a hotel, and in the area that we're in, that's a couple of $100. A couple $100 for your hotel. You could probably fly for $300 to $400 from anywhere in the U.S. Even still at this point, buying tickets a couple weeks before the event. And that's it. Food is covered at the event. So I mean, you're in this thing for less than $1,000 to get the best education you're ever going to get in an automotive event. That's a pretty killer deal.
No, you got the price point down. That's for sure.
Yeah, no, I mean, like, why charge a lot of money? We don't need to charge a lot of money, and we wanted to make it cheaper, but one of the things that we were talking about with some dealers and some of the other speakers is if you go too cheap, then it seems like something's wrong. Like if we're like, "Hey, tickets are $100," they're like, "How's that even possible?" So, we made the tickets more expensive just to give it a little bit more perceived value.
Mm-hmm.
But, you don't want to do it free. Back when I was at DealerOn, we did a lot of events like this, and it was just free for dealers. And then it turned into like we partnered with Ford, and Ford would make it free, but it was only for Ford dealers, and it was an exclusive event. And you'd have all these dealerships register because like, "Hey, it's free. Sure, I'll go." And then when it actually comes down to it, half the people don't show up because you didn't shell out any money for it, and you get busy. If something comes up at work, no big deal if you don't go. So then we were trying to figure out what's the sweet spot where people feel like we're not charging too much, but we're not charging so little that there's no perceived value, or that like they're like, "Hey, I spent $50 on a ticket. If I can't make it to the event, no big deal." So we kind of had to like figure all of that out. We're not doing a crazy big stage setup with lights and all that. Like we don't need a lot of the experiential stuff that also costs a lot more money. So we wanted to figure out what that price point was, and we kind of landed on $350. But I actually just set up a discount code before this call, so anybody that's listening to this either live now or watching the replay later, if you use the promo code refresh, it knocks $100 off the price of a ticket, so you could get a ticket for $250.
Oh shit! Sweet deal.
Yeah.
Definitely. Who else? Who all do you have speaking? What are some of the topics? And it sounds like your one of the selling points was having the 50-50 split and presenters. What were some of the filters that you used to make sure that you are getting some of the best speakers?
So we wanted to make sure that it's somebody that has spoken at a lot of events, and that someone on our team or someone else that we trust has seen that person speak or present multiple times, and we know that that person truly wants to help dealers and isn't just up there trying to pitch their wares, and that they can bring advanced level content that the majority of dealerships will get something beneficial from. So we've got Eliana Raggio emceeing the whole event and also doing a talk about making your website work more like a human salesperson and not just be a kind of a boilerplate
catalog.
Yeah, right. So there's that. I'm talking about SEO, obviously. We've got Mark Irvin, who also works for Search Lab, who runs our paid search department. He's speaks all over the world, just like I do, outside of automotive at things. He got picked by Microsoft in 2019 as the top PPC expert in the entire world. So the dude's hella smart. So he's doing the whole talk about successful PPC tactics that work for dealerships at any level of budget. Because a lot of dealerships have the misconception that you got to drop 40 or 50 grand a month to be successful with paid search. So they just don't do it. But you can be really successful with 3 grand, 4 grand, 10 grand, depending on what your budget is. So that's kind of what he's talking about. Bobby Heron's doing a really cool talk talking about AI techniques and using Chat GPT and tools like that to make your dealership better across a bunch of different areas, like how to make your BDC more efficient, how to make your sales team work better, how to do things with your website better. So a whole thing about here's a bunch of different ways you can leverage the new AI tools to be better at your dealership. Jennifer Briggs is doing a thing about making your used car department more efficient, better, and also recession proof. So where you can still kick ass during the recession. Subi Ghosh is speaking. She's talking about using your own first party data to sell to what most dealerships would consider to be previously unreachable customers, and just the power of using your own first party data instead of relying on buying third party leads. George Nenny is going to be talking about GA4, which is going to be hugely beneficial because we're now a month and a half into the switch over to GA4, and the vast majority of dealerships still don't have it set up correctly. Pash did the whole ASC council thing, and most of the vendors aren't setting it up correctly or implementing it correctly.
Yeah.
A lot of the the website vendors and the chat vendors and third-party tools aren't using it the right way. So, and most dealers, even if they are firing events correctly, don't have GA4 set up correctly to be able to slice and dice their data. So Georgia's going to be helping with that. And then Sean Rains is going to be doing a talk. It's Blink 182 themed, so that'll be fun. It's always cool when he does stuff. But
Sean does some good presentations.
Yeah, his is like, basically it's like vendor accountability and dealership efficiency. So it's like holding your vendors accountable and being more efficient with the things that you do internally at the dealership. So we're hitting a lot of different topics about a lot of different things. And every presentation, it's a first time ever presentation. So it's not like, hey, I just went to Digital Dealer this spring and I saw Greg. Well, it's not going to be the same stuff. Or I just saw Bobby at something else. No, it's everybody's building brand new advanced level presentations. So it's going to be awesome.
And what are you doing?
Good. That's a good point.
I'm talking about SEO, but we are doing this.
Surprise.
We're in the big surprise, right? But so the two things that are really cool that I'm talking about, I've got a kind of an SEO mini audit that I've been using for years at 20 groups, and I've kind of tweaked it over the years. And in the current form, we've been using the current form since the beginning of 2022, and we've done audits on just shy of 1,000 dealerships in the last year and a half. And so we've got a lot of information where it's not like everybody's going to get up and go, here's what's important for SEO. You got to do this, you got to do this. So it's not going to be any of that. It's going to be real world data saying, look, here are the factors that we know Google looks at. I'm not telling you how to optimize, but we know these 4 or 5 things are the most important things that will influence your visibility. And according to these 1,000 website audits of dealerships, here are the things that you guys aren't doing that you should be doing, because these show the biggest gaps in knowledge or in execution on the SEO side. And then we've got another really big research project that, and this is kind of more focused on what I'm going to be talking about at NADA, but I'm going to give a little bit of a sneak preview at this Ignition conference, where we're doing a research project on Google Business Profiles. So we partnered with a couple of different tool sets, and we're able to pull data on over 8,500 Google Business Profiles, and it's over 1.6 million data points that we pulled. So we did car dealers, personal injury attorneys, and cannabis dispensaries to look at 3 different verticals where SEO is really important. So for the car dealership side, once I pulled out all of the service department profiles and parts profiles, we ended up with about 2,500 car dealership Google Business Profiles. And we can see, if you show up better, do you have the right category selected? Do you have, cars for sale displayed on your profile? Do you have questions and answers in your questions and answers thing that the dealership is answering? Are you using Google Posts? And all of these different things that you can do within your Google Business Profile. And instead of, again, getting up there going, here's your Google Business Profile, here's what you should do, we can actually show real world data of look, the guys that show up better are doing these things. The guys that aren't doing these things aren't showing up. So make your own decision. Don't listen to me telling you here's SEO best practices. You can see what's working and what's not. So do the stuff that's working.
What's Ryan got to say?
I'm just wondering why Bing hasn't copied Google Business Pages yet.
Uh, because Bing doesn't care as much about local as Google does. There
Okay.
is especially like West Coast, there's a lot more kind of disruption by Bing. A lot more people are using Bing, especially in the Northwest, just because that's where Microsoft is. But even still, people tend to not use it for local search. They still go to Google for local search stuff. Bing just doesn't care. And the reason that Google split the stuff up for departments for car dealers is Google tends to spend a little bit more effort on the verticals that spend a whole lot of money on Google, and car dealerships spend a whole lot of money on Google. So Google
Makes
will
sense.
do some things, and like he was just asking about the whole department thing. It's totally like, according to the rules for Google Business Profiles, car dealers are not allowed to set up a separate department listing for parts and service. But Google changed the rules specifically for car dealers. So for everyone else, here's the set of rules that says whether you're eligible to have a Google Business Profile or not. But for car dealers, Google said, well, hey, I know you don't really meet these requirements, but it does make sense to have a separate listing for parts and service. It just doesn't, like Google's requirements say it has to be permanent signage, separate entrance, separate staff, separate phone number, separate everything. And sure, it's separate staff, but a lot of times the dealership may or may not have a separate phone number because they may have a phone tree or they may have a receptionist. And there's definitely not a separate entrance. Yeah, there's a drive where you can drive your car in, but there's not a separate front door for service. So those things don't really meet the requirements, but Google says, hey, we'll bend the rules for car dealerships and allow that stuff to happen. But the other big pain in the ass, like he was saying, he was glad that Bing hasn't done it yet. It's a uber pain in the ass to set up those separate department listings, because you have to go and get it created first, which a lot of times is difficult because Google's going to come back and say you're just creating a duplicate of the main dealership, even though you're not.
Mm-hmm.
But once you get through all of those hoops and have it set up, the only option is to contact Google support and say, look, here's my listing for the main dealership. Here's my sales listing, or here's my service listing. Here's my parts listing. Can you nest those as departments so it's explicitly listed? Should be really easy, but Google support isn't aware of the unique rules for car dealers. And about half the time you contact Google support with anything related to Google Business Profiles for car dealers, Google support will go, oh, I noticed you have this department listing for parts and service. You're not allowed to do that. I went ahead and deleted those for you. So it's a whole kind of train wreck situation there.
Gee, thank you.
So,
Where do you fall on that? Do you encourage that? I know George.
definitely
I
encourage
believe
it.
it's
There's-
George or someone is a big proponent of that. I never went down that route because I'm like, the moment I go down that route, first off, I knew it'd be a huge pain in the ass. But second, they've done that before, decided to change the rules again, and all of a sudden, all that work that you put into it, all gone.
They won't change the rules on this because I have to be careful. Okay, they're a little bit of a side.
You sure
thing.
you want to say that?
Well, I'm under an NDA with Google, so there's certain things I'm not allowed to say publicly that I actually know, because there's a lot of people aren't aware that there's a support forum for every Google product out there: YouTube, Gmail, G Suite, Google Drive, all these. So there's support forums for everything. So there is a Google Business Profile support forum, but it's not staffed by Google employees. It's staffed by volunteers. And so random people will go in just to be helpful and answer these problems that people are having. And if you consistently answer stuff well, you get invited into Google's product expert program. So you get a little badge that goes on your answers to let people know that you're a product expert, which basically means Google has certified that you know your stuff and that people can trust what you say. And once you're in the product expert program, if you continue to answer stuff consistently well, you get escalated in level. Once you get to gold or platinum level, you actually sign an NDA with Google, and you know things, and Google will work with you to work on things that are coming in the future. You're in tests and things like that. And you have a weekly phone call with Google. Like, I'm a platinum level, and I'm the only product expert for Google Business Profiles in all of automotive, and I'm a platinum level expert. So every Friday morning at 10 Central, I have a 30-minute call with Google with the other like 15 to 20 product experts, and we talk about current issues and things that are going on. So circling back to where I tangented it off, I have to be careful sometimes about the things that I say, because I know things from behind the scenes that I'm not allowed to talk about. One of those things is the department thing for car dealers will never go away. It's there for sure, for forever. Now, is it important for everybody to do? No. Back to the example, if you're a Ford dealer in Wyoming and there's not another Ford dealer for 100 miles in any direction, you could probably make the case that you don't need to set up a separate service and parts listing because you're the only place people can go for Ford service.
Mm-hmm.
You could make that case. But in a market like Dallas, where there's 24 dealerships, and you're fighting against all of the other brands that have franchise locations and all of the independents that have locations that sometimes also offer service, and all the Jiffy Lubes and Quick Stop shops, when you separate out sales on your primary profile and then another profile for service and another profile for parts, you vastly improve your chances of showing up well in searches, because now you've got profiles for the specific business units that you have instead of having one profile that's supposed to mix for all of them.
It makes sense. Makes total sense. Yeah. You were saying in your presentation 4 areas of influence. I think that's how you worded it.
Yep.
Those 4, if I'm not mistaken, is site content, links, Google business profiles, which you're touching on right now, and reviews.
Yep.
Do I have that right?
Exactly
Okay.
right. That is exactly right. And the most important of that is site content. But coming back to the 20 group audit thing that I was talking about, of the almost 1,000 dealers that we've done in the last year and a half, it's scoring on your site content and how it's optimized, the links pointed at your website from other sites, your customer reviews on Google and Yelp and how you respond to those reviews, and your Google business profile and how that's optimized. By far, the lowest scoring area of those 4 is the content on your site and how it's optimized. Really? And that's the most important part for SEO, because links and Google business profiles and everything else doesn't matter if you don't have the content on your site. Remember, like I said earlier, Google is pattern detection. If you don't have the right pattern, having half the pattern doesn't matter. You need the full pattern. And consistently, the worst scoring section overall is the content on your site and how it's optimized. And dealers kind of approach SEO like a checkbox. Like, I know I need it. I don't really care. I don't really know. I just need to get it from somebody, so I'll just choose the cheapest guy. And they really should be looking at, not necessarily I want to buy the most expensive, because that doesn't necessarily mean that it's any better than the least expensive, but look at the value of what's being provided by the vendor partner that you choose to work with, whether that's someone in automotive or someone local that maybe works outside of automotive as well and doesn't just work with car dealers. So maybe that's a unique perspective. Or, that's kind of why I try to educate dealers on what matters for SEO, so that if they're out trying to make the call of who they're going to work with, they can find the right vendor partner that's going to be a long-term partner that brings success to the dealership. And they don't have to do the typical thing with dealerships where you try a vendor out for a couple of months and you don't like them, you swap to another one. And then you don't like them, so you swap to another one. And, like you were talking about earlier, SEO is a long-term play. And if you're switching SEO vendors every 6 to 8 months, you're not giving any of those vendors long enough to do anything effective. So you got to stick with somebody for at least a year to make sure that that person's able to do something that's going to help the dealership. But how do you choose the right one? Because if you just choose the cheapest, or you just choose the one that seemed to have a good presentation at Digital Dealer and ADA, you're not going to know they're not effective till you've been spending money on them for a year. So that's why I try to educate people more about, these are the 4 areas that matter. These are the best practices of things you need to do in that area. Take those dealership blinders off and look at your website like you've never bought a car before. And how is that vendor helping make your website experience better? And that hopefully is helping dealers find better partners that will be a better steward of that marketing spend.
I was surprised to see links on there. I expect you're referring to inbound links.
Yes.
From high value inbound links. I didn't, honestly, because I haven't focused in on the SEO side of things the way I used to. And back in the day, inbound links was pretty vital.
Yeah.
But I really thought that had dropped off the radar, and didn't realize they still. And of course, for a dealership to get those inbound links from reputable sites isn't always the easiest task.
Well, but see, the thing is, that's a traditional SEO approach where you want these high authority links, but that's for Google's regular algorithm, and Google uses its local algorithm to return search results related to dealerships. So the algorithm weights things differently, and links are still important, but it's a lot more important to get links from local websites and local businesses than it is to try to go after these really big authoritative sites. And the good news is, when I talk at conferences outside of automotive, I always say, look, the best way to get local links is to just get involved in your local community, because if you're involved in the local community, you're naturally going to get these links. Good thing about car dealerships is they're all philanthropically focused. They're all involved in the local community. They're all giving back to the local community. So there's tons of opportunities to get links. They're just not taking the extra step of getting the link out of those relationships. And their vendors, most vendors in automotive, don't do anything with link building. And like buying SEO that doesn't include link building is like buying a car that doesn't include an engine. Sure, you bought a car, but it's not going to get you anywhere.
Well, you, if I'm not mistaken, I was going through your blog over on searchlabdigital.com. If I'm not mistaken, I remember seeing a whole video that you had put together on just link building alone.
Yeah,
I should probably link. Yeah, I'm going to link that over in the forums after this, because it was pretty informative.
My video series at Search Lab is called Local Search Tuesday. So every Tuesday morning I put out a video, and it's usually like less than 5 minutes. It's usually like 3 or 4 minutes long about one particular strategy or tactic, or if there was an update, explaining the update. But sometimes I will share an entire presentation from an event. So like I did the Texas Independent Auto Dealer Association conference like 3 weeks ago. So like a week later, I shared my entire 40-minute presentation there to be helpful with things. Nice. And when I do these international SEO things, I'll share my entire presentation there. So the video series is a great way to just educate dealers. There's no like lead form gate where you got to put your email address in to get them. Like you just come to our site or follow us on social. It's free educational information, because again, there's so much BS out there. I'm trying to cut through the noise and let people know, hey, look, if you're doing it yourself, this is what to do. If you're using a vendor, this is probably what your vendor should be doing. And if your vendor's not doing a lot of this stuff, figure out why they're not, because it's not me going, this is the Greg Gifford way of doing SEO. This is based on, this is what research has proven. Our research and other people's research has proven actually works in the real world.
Yeah, I jump on there quite often. It's a great resource. It really is. You've done a great job building that out.
Thanks,
and of
man.
course,
I've been doing it for forever. I started doing it back when I was at Auto Revo, and that was, I started that. Golly, let me think. That was over 10 years ago. So I've been doing a weekly video between Auto Revo and Dealer On, briefly Wikimotive, and now Search Lab. I've been doing a weekly video series for over a decade.
I was going to, believe it or not, your profile, you've got 3 different profiles in the Dealer Refresh forums.
Probably because
Gmail.
He's trying to build his links up.
Just set up a new one.
Trying to get those links. And then one is associated with your Auto Revo, and of course your latest one, Search with Search Lab Digital. I'm gonna have to go in there and maybe
you can delete those
merge those together.
Either merge. Like I did, honestly, it's probably because I forgot I had it, or I couldn't remember the login and no longer had access to that email address, and didn't think about the fact I could probably just reach out to you and be like, bro, hook me up, get me back in. So,
By the way,
well, I was looking, you joined back in 2009.
Nice.
Let's use that one. Let's update that one for him.
Yeah,
so he can keep his OG status.
Yeah, that would be cool
for sure.
Geez, 2009. That's nuts, man.
Yeah. Look at that picture without the beard.
And no tattoos then too, if it's that long ago. Yeah. And now, I'm all the way up,
Tatted up, buddy.
By the way, let me throw this out, Jeff, real quick, because this happens a lot. If you ever sign up or when you sign up for the Dealer Refresh forums, or if you already are, and you need to change this, don't sign up with your current employer's email credentials.
Yeah, really.
Use your personal.
Yeah. Yeah. We get a lot
But
of
we can
requests
help you
for
change
that,
it if you need it.
for sure. Or
All right.
if you do build it, we can always merge them for you. That's not too bad. So, well, Greg, I tell you, it's always a pleasure having you on. It's I'm positive that the conference is going to turn out well for you. Definitely appreciate you putting together a quick discount code.
Oh, I don't think we mentioned the URL. So anybody that's listening, it's just ignitionautomotiveconference.com. You can go there, use
Perfect.
refresh as your code, get that ticket for $250.
Perfect. And the URL for your website?
It is searchlabdigital.com.
And definitely, it's a great resource. Click on blog. You're constantly keeping updated. There's always a ton of resource. Probably one of the best out there for SEO within the automotive sector.
Yeah, I try to help. Like, I've been around the block a couple of times in the last, I've been doing this 20 years now. So
Yep.
just try to help people be better at what they do. And hey, if they want to end up buying from us, great. If not, cool. I still help you be better,
Yep. Well, and that's why you're invited to speak at all these different conferences. So that's awesome.
Yeah.
Including Dealer Refresh.
Including.
Yeah.
All right, Greg. Appreciate it, man.
All right. Nice chatting with you. Thanks for having me on again, guys.
You got it. Talk soon.
Thanks, Greg. See
Yeah.
you soon.